The man who did this, the monster who did this, is dead, finally. His body is decomposing somewhere in the North Arabian Sea, which means, unless he stashed away one more videotape just in case, we won't have to listen to Osama bin Laden gloating on the 10th anniversary of his murderous deeds. That's good news. Bad news is that some of what he said on his earlier tapes is still pretty much on target, and in ways even he couldn't have imagined. I'm thinking in particular of a bin Laden videotape from November of 2004. It was the first message he'd put out in nearly 3 years. That's where he said that his plan was to bleed the United States to death economically, to make us spend so much trying to defeat him, trying to chase him down wherever, his words, wherever anyone raised a piece of cloth that said Al-Qaeda on it, that our economy would eventually collapse into bankruptcy. Now, by 2004, we were already in trouble in Iraq. Iraq was the extra war, the unnecessary war, on top of the war in Afghanistan. We were spending billions of dollars every week on the two wars, all of it borrowed money, all of it on the national credit card. And we had cut taxes twice. It's hard to have a strong economy when you're that deep in debt. Bin Laden was onto something. And since then, the unpaid bills have only piled up since then. We're talking trillions now. But here's the part bin Laden couldn't have predicted, that politicians of a certain stripe, politicians right here in America, would use that enormous debt as an excuse to weaken us even further, to dismantle programs they'd never liked to begin with, to shrink the government, in the famous phrase, until it was small enough to drown it in the bathtub, cutting back on education and scientific research, the kinds of things that grow an economy, cutting back on maintaining our roads and rails and bridges and ports, the kinds of things that support an economy, cutting back on protecting investors and protecting consumers, the kinds of things that build confidence in an economy, and then threatening default unless they get their way. We're doing all that to ourselves, not in his wildest dreams. 10 years after 9/11, Osama bin Laden is gone. But you might have to say that terrorists are winning.